What if one of the quarters sitting in your pocket right now is worth hundreds of dollars or even more? Most people see a state quarter and immediately think, it's only 25 cents. But collectors know that the real story can be hiding in the smallest details: the date, mint mark, condition, die variety, or an unusual minting error. Today, we're looking at 10 American state and commemorative quarters that deserve a much closer inspection. And I'm going to reveal the potential collector value as we move through them, because one of these designs has a story that goes all the way back to America's earliest history. So keep watching, because the last few coins could be especially interesting. The first quarter takes us to Arizona, represented by the famous Grand Canyon and the saguaro cactus. This quarter was released in 2008, making it a relatively modern coin compared with some of the classic U.S. coins collectors chase. But here's the interesting part. The ordinary Arizona state quarter is generally not a four-figure coin. The real excitement comes from unusual errors, varieties, and exceptionally preserved examples. A normal circulated piece might remain close to face value, but a truly unusual Arizona quarter could potentially move into the hundreds of dollars. And exceptional certified examples or major errors can sometimes approach or exceed $1,000. So don't just glance at the design and put it away. Check the date, mint mark, lettering, and the area around the Grand Canyon design. If something looks dramatically different from a normal quarter, that's when your 25-cent coin becomes worth investigating. Now we move to Pennsylvania, one of the original 13 colonies. The Pennsylvania quarter was released in 1999 during the very beginning of the state quarters program. Its reverse features the famous statue representing Commonwealth, along with the state outline and the important inscription connected to Pennsylvania's founding. More than 2 decades have passed since these coins entered circulation, but most ordinary examples are still worth around face value. The exciting possibilities come from errors, varieties, and coins preserved in exceptional condition. A remarkable example could potentially reach hundreds of dollars, while a major authenticated mint error or extremely rare variety could potentially push towards $700 or even higher. So if you have a Pennsylvania quarter, don't immediately spend it. Look closely at the date, mint mark, edges, lettering, and overall condition. The difference between an ordinary quarter and a collectible rarity may be almost invisible without magnification. Our next coin takes us back to Delaware, and this one has an especially powerful connection to American history. Delaware was the first state to ratify the United States Constitution, which is why its quarter features Caesar Rodney riding horseback. The Delaware State Quarter was the first release of the entire 50 state quarters program in 1999. Think about that. This little quarter represents the beginning of one of the most popular coin collecting programs in modern American history. Most Delaware quarters are common, but collectors still watch carefully for striking errors, unusual varieties, and exceptional condition. Depending on the exact characteristics, an unusual specimen could potentially be worth hundreds of dollars, while an authenticated major error could potentially approach $1,000 or more. So if Delaware is sitting in your collection, pay special attention to the details. This isn't just another quarter, it's the coin that opened the door to the entire state quarters era. Now we're heading north to New Hampshire, represented by the iconic Old Man of the Mountain. The New Hampshire quarter was released in 2000, and the famous rock formation was chosen because it had become an important symbol of the state. Sadly, the natural formation collapsed in 2003, making the quarter an even more interesting historical reminder today. Most New Hampshire quarters aren't worth anything close to 4 figures, but collectors search for unusual mint errors, varieties, and high-grade examples. A particularly desirable error or unusual specimen could potentially reach several $100s, and a dramatic authenticated error could potentially move toward $1,000. So take a close look before dismissing this coin. The Old Man of the Mountain may have disappeared from the real landscape, but his image remains permanently preserved on millions of American quarters. Next comes Virginia, one of the most historically important states in the nation. Its state quarter was released in 2000 and features the three famous ships associated with the founding of Jamestown: the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery. These ships represent the beginning of the first permanent English settlement in Virginia in 1607. That means this quarter carries more than 4 centuries of historical context in its design. But when it comes to value, the ordinary circulated Virginia quarter is generally not worth hundreds or thousands. The real opportunities are in unusual errors, varieties, and extremely high-grade examples. A notable error could potentially bring $500, $700, or even around $1,000 depending on exactly what it is and how it grades. So don't just look at the ships. Examine the date, mint mark, lettering, rim, and surfaces carefully. Sometimes the most valuable detail is the one you almost didn't notice. Our journey now takes us to Colorado, with its beautiful Rocky Mountain landscape and the iconic evergreen tree. The Colorado Quarter was released in 2006 and its design captures the natural beauty associated with the state. At first glance, this looks like an ordinary modern quarter and millions were made. But coin collectors don't stop at the design. They look for errors, varieties, striking problems, unusual surfaces, and coins preserved in extraordinary condition. An ordinary circulated Colorado quarter usually won't make you rich, but an unusual authenticated error could potentially bring hundreds of dollars, with particularly dramatic examples potentially reaching $600, $700, or even around $1,000. So if you have a Colorado quarter, take out your magnifying glass and inspect it carefully. Look around the lettering, date, rim, and central design. The quarter may look ordinary from across the room, but under magnification, the story can become very different. Now we arrive at Maryland, represented by the famous Maryland State House, along with elements of the state's history and identity. Maryland's quarter was released in 2000, placing it among the earlier coins in the state quarter series. And because these coins have now been around for more than 2 decades, many have passed through countless hands, pockets, vending machines, and cash registers. That makes pristine examples more interesting to collectors. Again, the ordinary Maryland quarter is generally common, but an unusual mint error, scarce variety, or exceptionally high-grade certified example can potentially command hundreds of dollars, while a dramatic error could potentially reach $800, $1,000 or more. So don't assume that every Maryland quarter is valuable, but don't assume they're all worthless either. Check the date, mint mark, condition, and especially anything that appears unusual compared with a normal example. And now we reach a very different quarter, the Maya Angelou quarter. This coin is part of the American Women Quarters program, making it much newer than the classic state quarters we've just discussed. Maya Angelou was an extraordinary American writer, poet, performer, and civil rights figure, and her quarter honors her legacy. Because these quarters are modern, most examples found in circulation are not worth anything remotely close to $1,000. But here's where collectors need to pay attention. Modern coins can still have fascinating mint errors and varieties. A dramatic, authenticated error can potentially be worth hundreds of dollars, and exceptional examples could potentially reach $500, $700, or even $1,000, depending on the rarity and condition. So if you find a Maya Angelou quarter, don't throw it aside simply because it's new. Check the date, mint mark, lettering, rim, and surfaces. Sometimes the newest coins can create the biggest surprises. Next we come to South Carolina, one of the original 13 colonies and a state with a deep connection to early American history. Its state quarter was released in 2000, and the reverse brings together several recognizable symbols of South Carolina, including the palmetto tree and other important state imagery. Like the other state quarters, most normal circulated examples aren't worth hundreds of dollars. But collectors know that mint errors can completely change the equation. If you find a genuine major error or exceptionally rare variety, the value could potentially climb into the hundreds of dollars, and in an extraordinary authenticated example, perhaps $600, $800, or even around $1,000. That's why inspection matters. Look carefully at the date, mint mark, rim, lettering, and overall strike. If something looks wrong in a way that appears to be a genuine minting problem rather than ordinary damage, don't spend it until you've had it examined. And finally, we arrive at the Blue Ridge Parkway Quarter, a beautiful design celebrating one of America's most scenic roads. This quarter was released in 2015 as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. The Blue Ridge Parkway stretches through the Appalachian landscape and is famous for its mountain scenery, making this coin a beautiful piece of American history and geography. But here's the final twist. Because this is a modern quarter, most normal examples aren't worth anything close to $1,000. The potential treasure is in the unusual piece's major mint errors, rare varieties, and exceptionally high-grade examples. A genuinely dramatic error could potentially bring hundreds of dollars, and an exceptional authenticated rarity could potentially approach $700, $1,000, or potentially more depending on the exact characteristics. So before you spend a Blue Ridge Parkway quarter, give it one careful inspection. Check the date, mint mark, lettering, rim, and design. Sometimes a quarter that looks completely ordinary can become very interesting once you know exactly what you're looking for. And there you have it, 10 American quarters, each with its own story, its own history, and its own collecting potential. From Arizona and Pennsylvania to Delaware, New Hampshire, Virginia, Colorado, Maryland, Maya Angelou, South Carolina, and finally the Blue Ridge Parkway. We've traveled through American history one quarter at a time. But remember the most important lesson. Don't believe that every quarter from these designs is automatically worth $500 or $1,000. The higher values are for specific errors, varieties, rare issues, or exceptional certified condition. Your job is to find the unusual one. Check the date, mint mark, condition, lettering, rim, and any strange-looking details before you spend it. And never clean a potentially valuable coin, because cleaning can seriously hurt its collector value. If you enjoyed this treasure hunt, subscribe to Million Coins, turn on the notification bell, and keep checking your change because the next quarter you pick up might be more interesting than it looks.